Hello, I'm about to spotlight the official podcast of Grapple. There's a penalty to Man City. I'm Benno.
And I'm JP. You're going to sound a lot more glum in a few seconds when that inevitably happens.
We're coming here live on Tuesday night. It's our patrons Phil and JP on the current shenanigans going on in the Premier League. Can still win it, JP. It'll be fine. Just, Everton will roll over, so at least there's that, We just got a lot of love for Mikel Arteta, so, we'll let that happen. We just need City to trip up. It'll all be good. You'll be league winners by the time some people listen to this.
They're playing West Ham, who've been on holiday for quite a while now, I think.
I was going to say Moisey could do a job, but
he's off.
Thing too.
Unless he just wants to do something extraordinary, kind of like good fortune. But it's only good for my for the FPL team, but then everyone else has captained him. So what bloody difference does it make? So it is. It's
Haaland's. Don't worry, Haaland's taking the pen, so they're not going to score, mate. Don't worry about it. There's no chance. It'll be all good.
No, he always misses those, doesn't he? All the time.
Well, we should probably just talk about footy for the next couple of hours. Sorry, Carl, for the West Hour standard. There's not a huge amount going on in the wrestling world. We've had our heads in a lot of retro stuff over the last few days. Time is now up on the. If people are sick of us plugging the Patreon, that one's a freebie. It's up there on the free P. Patrons got it early, but everyone can check that out. The uncensored videos up on Spotify, JP. We got away with another month. At some point, they're going to shut us down, but they don't seem to care. Just upload anything you want to Spotify. Porn, copyright free wrestling, who knows? Just anything will go. I don't know why I went straight to porn first, but yeah, Time's out. April 98. You can check that out.
Oh, mate, and what a glorious time as well.
And Haaland scored. Sorry, JP.
It's brilliant. Yeah, and there it is. Oh, that also relegates me from the FPL draft that were in there as well. I've deserved that. I've skated with relegation too long, as that's gone.
You've had the cracking with it. You're getting this happening live, and we made you sit through probably 9 hours of Triple H content over the weekend. So it's all coming up, JP, this week.
I mean, the Triple H stuff. I won't lie that this is the thing. I think it's like an incredible show, but the word conflicted came to mind. It was just it was so torturous. Because there's stuff in it that's just absolutely fucking brilliant. In terms of particularly the TV work there, and then. There's just points where you're going, mate, why has the Kurt Angle feud ended that way? And the kind of sense of disappointment that you still have. Origins of a cunt, as I think I labelled it before, and I'll stick with that.
It's a meaty fucker. Obviously, I think some are still working through the other. Again, as we always say, put those playlists together are almost as fun as doing the shows. And Gareth's famous words, there should just be a button on the network that allows you to do it. But Matty put a lot of blood, sweat and tears into it to come up with the different angles into it. And put it onto our usual Notion spreadsheet. So that's out there for you. If you just want to watch it rather than even hear us talk about it, that's fun too. Although I will say, once you get to the tail end of 2000, it does start to become a bit of a struggle. Not that I was complaining too much in the year 2000 when I was 16. Did find out as well, we've had some good feedback on it, JP. One of our patrons did mention that apparently did you see it on the Discord how old Mick Foley was during the Triple H and Cactus Jack feud in early 2000 into his retirement at Hell in a Cell, into his comeback with the shorter haircut via Linda McMahon. A 34-year-old man, JP. What's it got to say? A year younger than Swerve Strickland is now. Mick Foley retired, 34. Well, didn't really retire, but yeah, first time. Fucking hell, that's shocking.
Mate, that's just shocking. For that as well. So him and Taker, they were
a couple of kids.
A couple of young lads, isn't it? Just think of that. How the hell could I be 11 years old and what Mick Foley was back then? Just like a man. I could never grow up.
But in your head, when you're a kid, it's like, when I grow up and I'm 34, yeah, that's roughly what I look like. Wrestling kind of skews you in that way, but fuck me. Good for you, though, and good end to it. Good to see the compliments in the chat as well. We had a hell of a time doing it, even if we punished JP. We didn't really learn anything, JP. We kind of learned at the end of it. Spoilers, he's still a cunt. But there's some better stuff in 2000, I would say.
Oh, yeah.
Arguably anywhere else in his career, so worth it for that.
He could at least work. He wasn't like the bloated mess of as you say on there, as the reign of terror, which was that was more. I think having gone through that, this was actually this is there's good stuff here all the way. I'm not just like entirely resenting him. Well, I'm kind of halfway doing it. So there was at least that kind of pleasant aspect to take from it. But it is, absolutely fantastic. So I mean, like say, get yourself over to the Patreon for that. I mean, I think the next show is going to be a flashback for King of the Ring 2001, sticking in that neck of the woods as well. Like it is the month of Kings, May. So really looking forward to that.
Look of early 2000s as well, you know.
Yeah, going in. This is also the period as well. Like, I mean, it was like the one last night. I'd gone travelling and stuff like that, so it just feels like, King of the Ring 2001. I'm looking forward to it because there'll be stuff that I just would have edited. Like, was that really a thing? So really looking forward to that. So if you want all of that good content, go to Patreon.
Let's just jump in and. Me and Matty will be recording the King of the Ring 2001 show, and we've got a special guest joining us. We've got Michael Hamflett from What Culture, Dr. Fed himself, joining. I've called him like the junior doctor, Matty. Basically, I'm going to try and be the referee between the two Fed heads as we talk King of the Ring 2001. But really excited to have Hamflett on the show and on Grapple for the first time. Big fan of what those lads do over there. So be fun to do, and I'm sure we'll spare some time at the start to let him in. I'm thinking of this as like it's almost like an unofficial Grapple versus where I get to referee between the two of them going in on their Fed love. Maybe we'll get Sidgwick on one in future, so I can do that with him on AEW. But it's been a dream of mine to get Hamflett and Matty on the same audio. So those who know. And if you ever listened to their stuff or seen their stuff, then you'll be very much into that. So very excited to have him on at the weekend talking all things King of the Ring 2001. Kurt Angle going through the glass with Shane McMahon, Steve Austin and Triple H. Not Triple H, Jericho and Benoit with Triple H out of the mix. It's going to be a hell of a time. It's a show even I've got fond memories of, and it's WWF in the year 2001, so it's before it was crap for 20 years. So I might even join in with them too and being excited about it. So it's going to be fun, that one.
Oh, it's going to be absolutely brilliant. And like I say, I'm looking forward to hearing Michael on there, Michael and Matt. And like I say, you're going to have to do that refereeing there for that. But it's going to be an almost unbearable amount of Fed love coming through there. It's going to just be radiating through the screens.
At least it was good then, ish. Going into it wasn't quite invasion yet. We've got good timing because there's some interesting things we could follow up next month with it if we carry on in that kind of period. It's not really a ballpark we've really done before, so should be a lot of fun. Month of Kings continues.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic, mate. Yeah, really looking forward to that. So if you want all of that goodness, I'll get the plug in there properly now. Patreon.com/grapple or YouTube.com/@grapple if you want to become a YouTube member as well. They're the places to go.
Well, there we go. And as we say, there isn't a huge amount going on in the wrestling world this week. We've got some odds and ends. Just did the rundown with our pre-show listeners. But little bits of AEW, little bits of WWE. And I might shock you with some of the Japanese wrestling I've seen this weekend. Spoilers, one of them isn't Resurgence. But we do have Best of Super Juniors to talk about. A bit of Champions Carnival to talk about as well. And obviously Dark Side of the Ring in our documentary corner. But before we get there, should start with AEW, JP. And things seem to be quiet. Apparently there's upfronts tomorrow, isn't there, with Warner Brothers Discovery, and we're not expecting any kind of big announcements. It'd be typical Spotlight if that happened tomorrow, but PW Insider have said today they're not expecting any deal to be announced or anything like that, just more along the lines of AEW getting a little bit of a push from their overlords at Warner. But on that note, we do have a couple of updates on things kind of TV rights with AEW. First off, there's been a bit of speculation about what's going to happen with the NBA rights at the minute, isn't the JP? With again speculation over what that will actually mean for AEW's rights. A couple of really interesting written pieces on that. We got here from Essentially Sports. I think you got here, JP, with a question of whether AEW will get a financial edge with Warner Brothers Discovery losing the rights to NBA. If that happens, it could still go could still go either way, as could, whether it's good or bad news for AEW as well. And yeah, obviously Warner Brothers Discovery have, been a very good partner for AEW overall, and they're hopeful they're going to be getting the deal with the NBA going forward, despite some of their struggles as well. But I don't know, where'd you kind of place the possibilities with this one, JP? I know it's one that you've been closely following.
Yeah.
But you could probably read it either way, couldn't you? They end up with a load of spare money because if they don't get the NBA, or if they don't get the NBA, they might just pivot away from sports in general, and AEW gets fucked that way. I don't know, maybe AEW got to hope for a happy medium. Maybe they get the NBA at a good price, and they've still got some money down the back of the couch to give to Tony Khan.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? I mean, I think this is the fear they've got, and it's also like this is where the US media market gets kind of weird, but they might lose like the carriage fees, i.e. the station is less valuable because it doesn't have like the by far and away the highest rated programming on there as well. I don't know if they still have NHL rights, because I know they paid like a small fortune for those as well at the same time, but Warner Brothers Discovery seem pretty fucked. Like, I don't know if that's a technical term to use, but they seem like they're absolutely hemorrhaging money. There was talk about the merger of the platform with, there's going to be Max, their online platform merging with Disney Plus, and I don't want to say like Paramount, but there's a lot of that kind of stuff going on. The long and short of all of this is, do I think that, like, you can argue it either way. I don't think it's a good thing for the NBA to go, because it would they don't draw anywhere close to the kind of ratings or get the kind of demos that advertisers will want. Would it mean would it mean they get a slightly lesser deal? I mean, I think they're hoping, not overall, obviously, that they keep it, but they get some kind of NBA rights. So they at least have that kind of cachet and they don't lose all of it. And whether or not that's going to be a possibility. But, I think ultimately, like, they'll end up getting a lesser TV deal, because it's been going on for quite a while. Like, we're nearly halfway through the year, and yet they haven't sold the rights fees, and we're talking about a deal that's up at the end of the year. So like really at this stage, it's like I'm quite surprised that something isn't in place, and it seems like this is the hook for which all of this action to happen. And up to that point, like, let's face it, it's not a hot product at the minute as well. So the timing couldn't be kind of worse. They've made 3 massive signings, and you can't say it's made any real tangible difference. I'm not going to discount, like, I don't think they're actively losing pay-per-view viewers because of Will Ospreay and Okada and Mercedes Moné, but it doesn't really help. And I think that's the problem, is that they're trying to sell a product also to other stations that at the minute seems, quite frankly, a bit lukewarm. And like you mentioned earlier on, there's that problem about them pivoting away from this as well. If they go into reality TV, which is a lot cheaper, and they suddenly decide, it'll be like with UFC when it got kicked off Spike, effectively for TNA, like, it wasn't a good thing. It was like they decided, they did a whole rebrand of the entire channel, and that's how they ended up fucking off. So, yeah. What was it? Is that Warner Brothers Discovery of 4 seasons left on their deal? Oh, the NHL deal. But it's hockey. It's not going to be as big, is it? It's not going to carry that kind of cachet.
Yeah, I mean, and like I say, it's one of them where I just think a deal's going to come, and I think you're probably right in that. It's just one of them. I think it's been that long that anything they announce is probably going to, unless it's like the monster end of the number, it's going to feel disappointing. It's going to feel like, oh, they waited what was all the negotiation for? What was all the waiting for? And obviously, we can all talk about the year-on-year decline of AEW as far as viewership goes. You're kind of, at this point, talking near 100,000 a year as far as overall viewers. Demo weakening, but maybe not to that degree. But in general, clearly down. But at the same time, in its slot, often number 1 for the time slot, often, if not always, top 3 for the time slot, still extremely valuable, and still worth paying that money for. I think the only thing they probably got to worry about is if for whatever reason, if WBD don't get the NBA and they just decide to go in a completely different direction and spend the money elsewhere, then that could be a real issue, and that they might not want to be associated with quote unquote sports at that point. They might not want to push AEW, but I'm pretty bullish they're going to get it, and I'm pretty bullish whether it's good, bad, or somewhere in the middle, Tony Khan's going to sell it like it's the greatest deal of all time, and it was worth presumably playing hardball in the background to get to this point as well. But yeah, you know, their stronger negotiating position that it felt like they were in a couple of years isn't quite there anymore, but it doesn't mean, you know, the chips are entirely in WWE's hands. They've definitely still got a strong card to play there as well. But yeah, maybe we'll get some more updates on that through the week. But yeah, some other AEW news going on as well, JP.
Yeah, there was. I mean, one of the first story to bring up here, I mean, in terms of Cash Wheeler, the assault with a deadly weapon case that's been entirely dropped by prosecutors apparently. This came out. This was reported by PW Insider on here. That they entered a nolle prosequi notice, which seems unnecessarily fancy because it just means decline to pursue, which means just use that really in this day and age. But there you go, where they formally ceased legal action in there. I did think it's allowed with a gun in Florida. It hardly seems like anything exceptional. This is entirely what I would expect. In fact, I'd look at it as a rites of passage for people to be kind of doing there. Yeah, so I'm almost surprised it came up this far as well. It had no impact on his career, did it? Like, I think at times there was talk about people trying to get like him being fired and stuff, but
maybe they knew it wasn't going to go anywhere, but like the trials were set for next week and it went this long, didn't it? So it seemed like a realistic possibility, but yeah, it hasn't kept him off TV or anything like that. And yeah, it sounds like, don't know a lot about the American judicial system, but that's it, it's done. And he can move on, and he can wave his gun at as many people as he wants. I saw Snowboy say on Twitter today he wants to see him do a gimmick with it. Maybe it could be like like a Bruiser Brody type, but just waving a gun around in the crowds of AEW. Probably not a good idea. They're struggling on it. With drawing crowds, but you know, there's something there. I'm surprised there's barely been any reference to it on TV. Maybe a couple of cheeky chants here and there, including at Wembley, obviously as well. But good, I guess, is my reaction to that one, JP.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think it's, you know, it's the US, mate. They love guns. What can I say? We'll never get it. Like the rest, if you're from anywhere else other than the US, like the gun thing makes zero sense. It's what these lads do. But on a much more wholesome end of the scale, I don't know if you saw this. But Willow Nightingale. I mean, my God, like she needs to be like they need to be thinking like this is the face of our women's division for 2025 here. Because she went to that wrestling club, which I won't lie, I have a look at like. I find that the most wholesome wrestling content that there is. And obviously she turned up and it's just like, look at the reaction for this. I thought it was absolutely like, dare I say it, for like cynical old me, I thought this was like a cracking story. He's
it's
brilliant,
lovely anytime they do that.
Yeah.
Anytime they do that, got taken.
Didn't they all get taken to WrestleMania by Cody Rhodes, didn't they for like both nights? Yeah. No wonder, like, I swear that club, let's just say, has tripled in size. And I'm not entirely, like, I think it's just people going, because this bloke just, like, mad stuff happens in it. I'm signing up. I've got zero interest in wrestling, as he makes me sit through a Carter Omega. But we'll go viral, and all I need to do is go absolutely batshit for stuff. But no, it does the Lord's work. I just wish there was that kind of school where, like, I wish I was in that school where there was somebody doing that. Imagine that. Somebody put on, let's say, today, like you put on the Champions Carnival final for your class or something like that. Just go, I'm gonna watch this. Just see what the hell they make of it. But
kids seem happy to watch it though. They're proper into it. They were watching because there was they showed the Oku Osprey footage, didn't they? I remember seeing that clip from it as well. I just can't imagine, being in school. Like I used to dream of that when I was a kid in school. But my dreams were like Brutus the Barber Beefcake turning up. So I'm probably glad. Probably now knowing what I know after that Dark Side of the Ring episode, or Marty Jannetty was my other hero in the mid-90s. Maybe I should be glad that didn't happen. But Willow Nightingale are a more wholesome hero for the kids, and all over the place at the minute.
Yep, she's over and she's defending the TBS title on May 18th at the Stardom show at the weekend. This is Flashing Champions, and she's facing Tam Nakano. She's like, one of the big stars like in the company. I just find this very weird though. I'm not mad about this. You're building up to a pay-per-view match that's coming the week after. why is she defending her title? Like, if anything else, you want to do you really want to have necessarily the title on the line where you could do some sort of angle if they choose to go it that way? I don't know. It's been a bugbear of mine for a long time because it just always suggests, right, well, the result is not in doubt here, is it? And I know that sounds daft, but I do like that artifice of kind of keeping it there. But yeah, she's going to be, it says a lot about the relationship with Stardom as well. The fact that they're going to be, they want to bring over like kind of stars and they're going to have access to it. It's going to be just good for her if she can go over there and get in there on the reg as well. She's going to get better. And it just cements that feeling that we've all had. I'm not like alone in this, of like, she's someone who just has that, she has it. She has that presence and charisma and her matches, and the matches are good. And you just go, that's really the battle. And her promos are like kind of like really authentic. There's just like a,
that's the
like,
big thing.
We said Gareth says she reminds her like sort of prime Bailey in NXT, just like a complete underdog baby face, and you just think, well, just go with it.
The women's division's always been the one in AEW where it's been like, oh, they need to do this to turn the corner. They need to make Rampage a women's show. They need to get a big star in. And it's often not the plan that you make that works, you know. The plan, obviously, they've made is bring Mercedes in and she can be the big star of the division. And I know it's partly the story that they're playing, you know, including last week's Dynamite with the very, very unlikable Mercedes promo at the end of it. And then you contrast that with her promo, and it's like, you know what? Based on those performances, I think I'll go with her over Mercedes as my big women's star. And it's just, like I say, clearly wasn't the plan, but you might have to do that switch at some point and maybe go with even stronger as the face of the division whenever they do the Mercedes turn, if presumably that's coming as well. So no, always wholesome to see and good to see it around the world as well, and keeping the buzz going there as well. But speaking of Dynamite last week, we've got Dynamite coming up this week as well to talk about. So to just turn things on its head, JP, it's a slow news week, so throw in I'll give you what's going on Dynamite this week, and then we'll talk about what's set it up from the TV this weekend. Let's try it this way for once. So this week's Dynamite, we've got Swerve versus Brian Cage, an eliminator match. We got Okada versus Dax Harwood for the AEW Continental title. Bryan Danielson and Jon Moxley against Jeff Cobb and Kyle Fletcher, which was announced on Collision this weekend. We've got Matt Jackson and Nick Jackson versus Christopher Daniels and Matt Sydal, the RH team that went good when they were good. Apparently getting a booking. Daniels busting out that horrendous ring gear and cutting a promo on Collision this week as well. Tony Storm versus Haley Cameron is on that show. Adam Copeland, Malachi Black are doing it in ring. Speaking of which, Willow and Mercedes doing a contract signing for the TBS title, and we've also got Roddy Strong and Will Ospreay doing some form of face-to-face. Oh, and Hook returns too. Excited for that Dynamite, JP, and then we'll get into whether the TV this weekend made you so.
I'm not really excited, mate, if I'm going to be brutally honest about it as well. Probably because I'm not feeling massively excited about Double or Nothing.
No, I'm feeling massively excited about AEW right now.
Yeah. It's amazing. Like, we sound so fickle. There are sometimes we come on here, like, only if it wasn't that long ago we were saying that stuff is really good, and it's like, I got the feeling back. And then very quickly, you kind of reminded that like these kind of little high points and peaks are always drowned out by stuff that like is good, but it's never anything more than that, and it doesn't feel like kind of essential. And it's, dare I say it is incredibly EWR at this point, isn't it? Like, it really is just the formula, like just reading through the run sheet of all the stuff that's on there, with a few sort of backstage like interview bits as well. Like it's quite uninspired.
It's so EWR that like last week's Dynamite, literally every single match on Dynamite, I don't think there was an exception, had a beatdown afterwards. And that was literally an option on EWR. You know, if you didn't want to book a separate angle, you just add to the end of your finish a beatdown angle where the heel beats down the winner or the face beats down the heel or somebody runs out. That literally happened on every single show on Dynamite last week, and that's just Tony Khan not having, you know, any real quality control or you know, any kind of just like anyone just peeking through and going, oh, Tony, maybe you move that segment there, maybe you don't do a beat down after the match, maybe we could do it somewhere else on Collision maybe, which was purely a matches show this week. That might sort us out as well. So I'd probably expect more of the same going into Dynamite. But as you said on the pre-show, JP, we're like, you know, how many days away? 10 days away. By the time people hear this, I think it's about 11, 12 days away from the pay-per-view. Yeah, I don't know if anything on that Dynamite screams get hyped to me, unless you're really into the AEW versus the old AEW story that we're telling. We mentioned before, obviously, with Hamflett joining me and Matty this weekend to review King of the Ring 2001. That Sidgwick of What Culture wrote a really interesting piece about AEW and the I don't know, I suppose the want to continue to make AEW the brand, the babyface at AEW. Obviously, read his words. He can do it more justice than me. But there does seem to be like a bit of a desperation or just a general kind of not reading the room, I would say, of being like, like everybody from Ospreay to Copeland to this story with the FTR and Kingston, and it's all AEW. AEW's the main character here. AEW's the biggest babyface in these stories. And as we kind of talked about it on our Discord this week, I'm one who definitely criticises them when they've made AEW the heel in the past. But to kind of Sidge's wider point, it feels a little bit like, are they really the face now, though? Like, can you really, after everything, and considering, the last couple of years we've had of AEW, I understand the want to do that myself, but, like, just, yeah, the moment's kind of past to do that. I think maybe they just need to concentrate on, let's just build some actual stories between actual wrestlers, rather than, go into what is a very WWE feeling thing, where Team Raw are going to fight for the rights of AEW against the dastardly heel authority figures who are running Raw/Dynamite right now. Yeah, they kind of put into words very well kind of what I've been feeling, the malaise I've been feeling in general about, one, those types of stories that AEW keeps going back to, and two, this particular story that's probably the hottest things on the shows right now, but it's not exactly filling me boots with excitement.
It's not very original either. And I think that's the other thing in all of this is it's not like these are like kind of brave new world and trying different things. This is very much kind of like wrestling 101. I think like this is the thing we've it's like saying where the best wrestle, and what we found out is what they found out is that 700,000 people in the US will watch that live quite happily. Like that is good enough.
Less than four if it's on Collision or Rampage this weekend.
Yeah, exactly. And they'll that's their thing. But ultimately I was thinking about this, like I think the Mookie Ball still exists in some kind of form, but I think the problem is, and this is me fucking banging on about like media stuff all over again, but like the whole of it, like it still requires that person. I'm never convinced they've got the idea of these are like their relationships, and this is where we want them to kind of go and think about it that way and create that kind of like storybook. Because, like, yeah, there's, I'm thinking about like the build for like Double or Nothing. That was like their biggest show and everything else. And it's like they haven't moved on and they haven't progressed in this fifth year. It's like, I know we're talking about the difficult fifth year, and I think at times like they're deflected by talking about WWE and stuff like that. And I think this is where we've said it before. This is where Tony Khan as Booker should be stepping away. Like this is where he needs, if nothing else, a break, and just go actually. Someone else needs to be able to do this, and we need to be able to think of like some genuinely just in terms of the presentation, because like you've just said a few minutes ago, it's very raw light at times.
Yeah, that's what it feels like, and that's been Dynamite. On the flip side, Collision this week felt very much like a show for the sickos, and it was matches. It was kind of matches for matches' sake. By the time you mentioned on the pre-show, by the time I got to Rampage, I was the same as you. I was tapping out. As soon as I saw Johnny, whatever his surname is now, I was like, all right, I'm done.
Yep.
I'm done with me wrestling for wrestling's sake. So it's funny that there's like that that kind of speaks to the problems with the story across the shows, like, and again, Sid just put this in his article, like, yeah, we're fighting over like the future of the company with the Young Bucks taking over and stopping Tony Khan do whatever he wants, except for on Collision, where Tony Khan can apparently book all the dream matches he wants and be completely uninterrupted and not bothered by it all. So that kind of exists in its own world as well, which has its own problems. Like, as I really enjoyed Collision this week. It feels a bit stakeless. It feels a bit, a lot of 50-50 matches where you kind of know the winner, and the 50-50 matches are good, but you're not necessarily invested who's going to win in them. That's like the other end of the spectrum as far as like some of AEW's problems about making their telly particularly must watch in a lot of ways. But yeah, speaking of it, did the Speaks at Collision do anything for you? It was very much one of those ones where it was at a show for the sickos. There was a little bit of building there for Double or Nothing. We got a surprise Swerve appearance where for once he didn't look like a complete idiot. So that's good. Actually mostly liked that segment. We had a bit of build with Ospreay and Roderick Strong that probably took me down a notch on my initial excitement on the on at least looking forward to the match. It was almost like if you just give me that match on paper, I don't like the booking getting into it, but it's Ospreay versus Strong. If it's just a pure match on a black and white piece of paper, sounds good. When you got Roderick Strong on commentary doing his shit comedy act, it's like, oh yeah, it is. It's Ospreay against like a fucking lower card geek. I'd rather just have the match blind. I'd rather it just happened one week on a Collision or a Dynamite or something like that, rather than trying to build it. So that was the negative of trying to give some build to Double or Nothing. So yeah, bit of positive there, bit of negative there, and then like I say, around it, some really good matches, JP. There with quotes around it.
Yeah, I was thinking when you just the Will Ospreay Roderick Strong, I want to see that in Rev Pro. I think as a one-off match there, I'd probably end up really enjoying it, and it'd be really fun. On a pay-per-view where you're thinking this is his bread and butter, like where he needs to be, it needs to be a lot more substantial. But you're right, like I watched some of the matches, and I suppose, the image I've got behind me, because again, it's like to say that this is like the pick of the images to go through. I may change it halfway through the show, seeing how I feel. Is Dax Harwood versus Tommy Billington, which I watched as like it was more of like a curio match. I'd never actually seen.
Your Canadian source was right, to be fair.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think this is the thing, isn't it? Like, I was probably expecting him to be a bit more spectacular, just getting into the match, I suppose, than kind of what he was. But he was all right. He was fine. As a one-off match, I'd be more than happy for him to be on there. But in terms of like him being, I don't know. I got disturbed here because my camera has magically gone off. And I don't quite understand
really
why
excited.
that is.
You're really enthused by the point you're making.
Exactly, very enthused about Tommy Billington, but like I don't know, he didn't shit the bed either. As seemed to be, it seems the predictions were like kind of like almost extremes, and I thought in the end, he did fine, he did well.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of how I came out of it. I liked it. I'd seen the Bulldogs way back when, and they were terrible. And any clip you ever saw of them, it was like I once went to the circus in Bootle, and the circus in Bootle had two Spider-Mans having a wrestling match against each other on trampolines. And they were just jumping around doing high spots, and it was like if only like a Jim Cornette or somebody could actually see this, they'd get to see what that acrobatic just doing spots wrestling that they think is all modern wrestling was literally happening at this circus I went to. And then I saw the Dynamite boys, the Billington boys wrestle, and that's literally what they were like. No realization of like actually, and this is a genuine point, telling a story or understanding why things go in a match, or why, Uncle Tommy used to do the spots he did. They were just running through the spots, and they were still like that a couple of years ago when I last saw them, and I'd heard mostly negative reports about them when they did Rev Pro and they'd done other things around the country over the last couple of years. And then, like actually seeing Tommy on Collision, maybe it was that low expectation, but I was genuinely impressed. He's very raw, and he feels very early in his career, and it's the problem that I know he's not. If this was the Tommy Billington I saw for the first time 4 years ago, or whenever it was when they first came on my radar, I'd be like, ooh, there's something there. You could do something with him. And it sounds like from maybe your source I might have spoken to, and a couple of other people, that maybe he wasn't the shit one. It was the other one that was the problem. And I think the other one's in boxing. I think I heard over there the last couple of days. So now he's free to just be the tribute to his uncle. And good Lord, does he look every bit his uncle. But yeah, it felt like a bit of a rough diamond here. I thought it was a really I would say basic match because it had to be, considering what he's capable of. But I thought Dax structured it really well. They took a really quiet crowd for bits in this match to a crowd that seemed to be biting on Tommy Billington's stuff. He got a nice ovation at the end of it, and yeah, I thought it was a really good, memorable bit of business on a show that it was full of, again, good matches. This is one I actually will remember going forward because it was that little bit different. It wasn't perfect because Billington isn't perfect, and yeah, I thought it was a lot of fun.
I was watching this and I was thinking, I'd like to see him over here for a bit. Just regularly working, just like with, Rev Pro is obviously the go-to place. That would be like somewhere where if you did like an extended stint, because the thing I didn't want to see after this was I thought, like, you just want to be keeping an eye on him and saying, okay, I want to bring you in, but you need a lot more experience and you need to work a few more places, but we can arrange to maybe get you into Japan and whatnot. And you'd imagine with his name, dare I say it, like, because I'm frightened of New Japan at points, but that, like, you would have thought with his name and everything else, there'd be a point of him going, like, kind of over there for an extended period of time. Because there's something there. And, like, I kind of came, like, it's like my expectations, as I said before, were kind of, like, all over the place. But I just don't want to see him every week. I don't want to see him next week. I don't want to see him, like, for a few months. I want to see him, like, they bring him back. They'll be in Canada at some point relatively soon. And you know what? Like, bring him back over there. I mean, it didn't have to be Canada, but you need to let him grow on the indies.
Maybe not the show, but like a pre-show match or something. They could do something with him over here. Absolutely. He's more of a British bulldog than fucking, Davies shit son. So there's that. You could do something. You can tell. I bet you Brian would kill to wrestle with him. Like, I don't know if you saw the footage of him watching back the match with Bret Hart in his house. Don't know how we ended up in Bret Hart's house, but he did. Bret was giving.
I swear we'd knock around if we had half the chance, mate, wouldn't we?
That's true too. I kept rewinding. There's an Instagram story, and you can kind of hear someone talking. I was like, God, I just want to hear what Bret wants to say. Maybe he was like, that Dax one's actually shit, and he keeps texting me all the time. I'm sick of him. Maybe it was that, but bit of people like that with pointers in his ear who know, how Uncle Tom used to work. Then you might get something out of him. But yeah, I did genuinely think there was maybe something more there than I did before, and it compared to the other matches on here, it was something I think I'm gonna remember going forward. But yeah, anything else that stand out to you from Collision? Like I say, we talked the Ospreay thing. Any thoughts on the Swerve angle or anything else from the show?
I was glad that he was made to look strong. It's who he was made to look strong against. Because I couldn't give a shit if this is it's a match with Brian Cage. And it should be something where, like, it's a massive distraction, isn't it? It's like he's defending the title against Christian, and it just feels like it's like he's having a match with Brian Cage. It's not something you can get excited about in the run up to a pay-per-view. Like, I'd sooner he just had like big promo battles with Christian, frankly, for a few weeks rather than go down this route.
Yeah, we could have just forgotten the embassy, whatever the thing, couldn't we?
Yeah.
We could have just moved all those lads off. I get it. It's just, like I said on the weekend show, my problem was more, the beatdown angle was good. It was just doing another one the week after Christine and the lads have already beat him down. But it sets up, you can go through Cage. Hopefully this isn't a 50-50 match. Hopefully he goes through them quite quickly on Dynamite, and, we move on to him, presumably facing, Nick Wayne and Luchasaurus at some point as well, and then we get to the Christian match. That's probably coming in the week's TV. Yeah, but he did look stupid for once, so that's good. He looked like he was ready for the heels, and even when you felt like they had him, he came back, and he managed to look strong and get himself out of the situation. So better booking than he's had so far. It's just the characters he's interacting with that are sort of problem, which is quite similar to the Ospreay problem with Roddy Strong for me.
Yeah, with the Ospreay, I mean, like I say, Ospreay Lee Moriarty, like I say, I liked it for the period of time it was on. It was like it was perfectly decent. I'm just trying to see how long it was. I mean, it was 10 minutes of what you'd expect, where there was no very little wasted motion at points. But then it's Will Ospreay kind of. Tell me if there's a similarity in booking here. Will Ospreay's facing Shane Taylor, so he's facing like another stable, while really he's supposed to be having a feud with this guy and his stable. So rather than the patriarchy, this time round, it should be with the Undisputed Kingdom. But instead, he's sidetracked with Shane Taylor Promotions in the same way that Swerve is completely sidetracked with what do you call it? With the Gates of Agony and the Mogul Embassy. So it's just like, it's exactly the same type of angle is really what we're getting here for it. For a match that, as we said before, I'm not particularly excited by. I think it.
I'm less excited now.
Yeah.
I've seen him sell for Shane Taylor on the outside during the Moriarty match, and then, like I say, the double whammy of Roderick Strong doing his loud voice commentary just made me go, let's just get to the match and move on. Annoying. Jesus Christ, it's so mid card. But again, match good is kind of the analysis there. And yeah, if we're talking match good, so the only other thing I had to note from Collision was I did genuinely think Cope and Kyle O'Reilly was a lot of fun. Told a nice little intricate story with that one, and I thought Kyle O'Reilly, showed a bit of personality there. It was a nice emotional moment at the end of the match that they kind of made a little bit more interesting as well. And just all in all, a good piece of work, adding to the I was going to say the dossier of Adam Copeland's really solid work in AEW, but maybe adding to the dossier that might be presented as evidence one day when I finally make my big turn and go, you know what, he's all right, Cope, isn't he? Like I did with Christian.
And they're going somewhere with it now, aren't they? Obviously, I'm expecting him to lose to Malachi Black and then turn evil. That appears to be the suggestion.
Do you reckon spookiness happens on Dynamite in that one? I'm reckon lights off, somebody starts vomiting black blood or something like that. That's coming on Dynamite, isn't it, with them too? What's
the chance of old Davey Heath getting on his clobber and them doing some sort of...
We did say in an interview the other week, he tried to get him into WWE and Vince didn't understand it. He's already done an AEW appearance, There's a bit of talk about that, isn't there? That potentially we're doing Christian versus Swerve so that we can get it over with, do that, kind of get that last bit of juice out of Christian's heel run, and then potentially, Young Bucks are messing around with Christian. Cope's on the periphery there as well. You could set something up for All In if you'd be so interested. Edge and Christian versus the Young Bucks. Get the Hardys and the Dudleys out there, JP. Have you held a good old-fashioned ladder match at Wembley? Okay. Maybe ignore the last two bits, actually. Just the first.
Yeah,
there's something to that.
Oh, but what's the chances they would want some sort of involvement from them? Keep them around, we'll have them run out. And they'd be like, no, leave those teams out.
He got his WrestleMania money, right? You can fuck off.
On like an all-in card, that's proper booking. Like, dare I say it. And it does make sense. And it does feel like, he's proved that he will regularly work. And I've been telling, actually the nice story of, it getting to him. I think, we spoke about this on the weekend show, about how, he's been kind of from all the title defenses and everything else in the work. And you can't argue with the effort with it, because, it's another match of his where he's been... How many matches do you reckon he's had where he's gone 15 minutes plus? The crowd massively helped for this as well. They were a cracking crowd, but
continues to do terrible viewership. One of the all-time bad Collision ratings this week, but again, it's on TBS rather than TNT, so blame that. Doesn't help Cope's. Again, his dossier has been a draw, is a lot weaker. But there we go. But yeah, outside of that, Danielson and Claudio against Top Flight was all right. Never want to see the Blackpool Combat Club as a team ever again. And yeah, outside of that, that's kind of the week's TV for me, really. Like I say, it's a very dull moment in AEW right now. It's a bit of a scramble to get things to be really excited about, unless there's anything else for you.
No, I think that's pretty much it, isn't it? I mean, I can't think of... I mean, I actually have to say, just as a very quick shout out, the Danielson Claudio match against Top Flight were good, and then I just ended up thinking, Top Flight are just kind of there, aren't they? There comes a point where there's just be really the tag division should be based around teams like that now. That was a passing thought that I had throughout Collision. But Collision was, as always, I find it just more watchable because I'm probably a sicko, ultimately. But for my kind of wrestling telly...
for good and bad.
Yeah, it is. The problem is just all the big stuff is happening on Dynamite, ultimately. It's just it's where Swerve can get his revenge on the gates of agony, but not much more else to it.
Well, on that note, we should move over to things WWE, and we'll start as we always do. The most important thing going on, circling around WWE, is the Vince McMahon story. We had a couple of developments this week on it, more just a case of who can Vince McMahon's side get to do their bidding in the press, and we found out one of the answers over the last 24 hours. But yeah, first up, Vince McMahon's attorneys have opposed Janelle Grant's motion to strike the previous statement. To translate that, Obviously, Janelle Grant, as we know, filed a motion to strike some of Vince McMahon's comments about their relationship from the records, and Mr. McMahon's attorneys have apparently filed a memorandum that opposes that previous motion, and the McMahon side claims that the statements gave relevant context to the motion to compel arbitration, which in layman terms means discovery, which means the stage of the case that they're in at the minute. They argue that Grant's motion was meritless and the height of hypocrisy. And Vince McMahon said that Grant's initial complaint included private sexual text messages from Vince McMahon without including any of Janelle Grant's responses to those texts, which in Vince's words were equally and more aggressive and provocative. If you want to see the game that they're particularly playing with those specific comments, you don't really need to look much further than the New York Post, which is a bastion of great journalism, JP, in the year 2024. But of course, they've taken the bait, and their headline says it all. Vince McMahon accused of Janelle Grant texted him asking for rough sex and fantasized about being held down in lawsuits. No other context, just that. And you best believe, I haven't seen the story put out on Twitter over the last 24 hours. All of the people in the comments are the people you would expect in the comments, going, Me Too was great, wasn't it? Until women like this ruined it, and just taking the headline on face value. Doesn't seem to have been picked up by much more credible outlets, JP, but you can very much see the playbook that this lot are playing at this point.
Would you remember he's just hired that new PR firm, hasn't he? Mm-hmm. And that's them at work with this. And I think that's the really disturbing aspect, because obviously he wants this stuck in arbitration, doesn't he? Because he doesn't want it to go public, and that's what all of this is about blocking that. I just think in terms of credibility, it's a terrible look for him. That's the thing I can't understand with it. It's like a PR strategy. It's just like, well, going after your accuser in this way when you're a billionaire, and she very much isn't, is not the kind of look where you think, well, at some point, like he'll get the comments from the trolls, but ultimately, I think it's going to be hard if this does ever go to court, which is obviously the thing that even WWE don't want to have happen, do they? For this as well, but. This is the kind of the level of it's a shame to see like the New York Post doing it. I say shame to see it. It's not surprising. It'd be like if the Sun did it here, we don't have any of the expectations for them as well. But I think at the same time, it's also bringing out the story, because inevitably there's going to be a response from Janelle Grant, and it's whether or not is any of the big networks going to really go with this outside of like a News Nation. To think of it from a media perspective for a second, it's like, are any of the is CNN going to suddenly go, do you know what, we need to look into this case, what the hell is going on? And then suddenly you find that then the PR campaign that they have done can be viewed in a much more sort of cynical light, because it's just it's the whole power imbalance and power dynamics sort of come to light, isn't it, with all of this, like making out that somehow Janelle Grant is the real problem in the situation here. I mean, it's what Vince McMahon's like, isn't he? The prick.
It's what they do. And on that note, there's been a little bit more detail as well. Apparently, WWE creative creative director talked about some interesting interactions that she have talking a time in WWE, talking about interactions with Vince McMahon, creating a display board for the steroid trial, and the situation with Freddie Blassie and her headquarters employee as well. Definitely worth a look, to be honest, because there's some moments in there where she's kind of talking about Vince, and talking about having to help cover up during the steroid trial, and talking about some odd meetings with Freddie Blassie and such as well. That kind of gives you the impression that she's not saying it, but these issues were very much prevalent, even obviously back in those days, whether it was a Freddie Blassie or other people involved in the company as well. And again, it's a bit like the dark side of the ring we're going to talk about later. She describes Vince as always cool, which is not necessarily a word that I would use to describe Vince. But yeah, it's a bit like when you read the between the lines of some of the things people say on that dark side of the ring this week. what's the line? Is it Nick Patrick that says it? HR was invented in wrestling, and it's got a big picture of Vince McMahon over it. Yeah, there's definitely something to that, JP.
Oh, there absolutely is, isn't there? And I think this is the, you can't be at all surprised by any of this as well. But it's if for Freddie Brassey being like that, it's kind of what you expect. But yeah, I always think of that every time you see Dark Side of the Ring. Now you're kind of looking at the culture within wrestling. But we'll get onto that when we get to documentary corner.
Definitely. But yeah, not the only WWE news from this week, JP.
No, contract seasons. Well, people going and possibly people staying. But Becky Lynch's contract, reportedly 3 weeks away from expiring. Talks ongoing in there as well. This is according to Fightful Select on there. Obviously, Seth Rollins has signed a new big money multi-year deal as well. But for Becky Lynch, hasn't at the minute on here. Now, she... At the time of the story coming out on there as well, she is going to be defending her title against Liv Morgan at the King and Queen of the Ring in Saudi Arabia just before her contract is due to expire, which will be an interesting scenario. I can't see a world where she leaves, but she has the leverage, and should she be paid a shitload of money? Yeah. Because she is a big deal to them and a big star. Is she going anywhere? Absolutely not. She's a fucking lifer. She doesn't. I can't see a stage where Rebecca Quinn turns up in Stardom. I don't think any of that stuff is actually happening. If
Seth's signing, she's signing. Maybe the stories that it was a done deal were a little bit premature, but the story's coming soon that it's going to be a done deal. We'll be there.
Yeah, and she just gets to play hardball because AEW there are an option. Because would they have her? Of course they would. Would it make much of a difference? Let's be honest, probably not. If the last three haven't made that much more of a difference, I don't know how much more Becky Lynch could end up doing. But you would obviously sign her. But she has that leverage to be able to do that. But I think this is TKO with talent, and this is the kind of thing that they do. But somebody who definitely has signed is Damian Priest. And Fightful Select also has a few deals, a few sort of more notes further on that as well. That negotiations went down to the wire as his contract was days away from expiring. Fuck me, they play hard and fast with this as well. And by the way,
they really are leaving it late. I don't know what the deal is. What's going on?
But did you hear about the no compete thing possibly being ruled as illegal as well?
Yeah.
Now, that's more interesting because in theory, you could go proper fucking 80s and be frightened of a lads turning up on another network, on another fucking show with a belt, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think it was a story a couple of weeks ago, wasn't it? But I think that the complication is, though, it's whether WWEs are actually non-competes or not. Because often what WWE will do is, they're clever like this, and this is just what they'll do going forward. They terminate you with notice. So they're like, you've got we're going to fire you in 3 months. So you continue to work for them for 3 months, but it's not technically a no-compete if you do it that way, if you get what I mean. So it's not that sacked, and then there's a non-compete. It's just that you're still going to work here for the next 3 months, and then at that point you're going to be out on your arse, and that's how they get around it. And guess what they'll do for those 3 months? Not use you on TV, flog all your T-shirts for cheap on www.shop.com and move on. Yeah, so... but they are definitely being very strange and fast and loose with the contracts and leaving them late. I don't know if it's a TKO thing, it's a Triple H thing, I guess it is just a TKO's way of doing things. Do you see this in UFC? I don't know.
Yeah, it was UFC and Garnu. Garnu was heavyweight champion and he's left and he's signed with PFL. They just haven't got any good heavyweights for him to fight against, and there's and there's a lot more money for him to face Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua in boxing, much more than he'll ever earn from MMA. But it's one of the things, this is what they do. If you think of other sports and you think of how much is spent on wages for talent, and you think of football clubs where an astonishing percentage of it, for TKO it's ridiculous. It is between 10 and 15%, if I can think rightly, which is nothing. They just look at them expendable cattle. And this is very much what Vince did with wrestlers. It's behind very much a corporate facade. So This is what they do, that they think they can do this. I think the problem, and I think the other thing they know, if we're going to be honest, going to AEW doesn't mean that AEW's business is going to massively pick up. I mean, we've seen the limited way that can happen with the CM Punk, and I suppose leading into Bryan Danielson and stuff. But sometimes it feels hard, like we're not in that era where a big star can turn up and sort of suddenly change your TV. It never did for TNA, did it? Like
that is
like.
Yeah, and that's it. It's. I always think of it like it's more of a team sport, and it's more of accumulation, and it's more of, like I say, it just takes something randomly getting hot, or the team as a whole to get hot in wrestling. But I was just going to say, while we're on contract season, didn't have it there in the stories, but I did think it was interesting to hear a quote from Danielson this week talking about his contract literally being up before All In. Sounds like he's on such good terms with Tony Khan that there's nothing to worry about there. But you talk about AEW contracts, like there's one that's like, I mean, come on, lads, get him. So, I mean, on top of giving him a new contract, I would also go, come on, mate, can you just do a couple of main events for us? Can we just put a belt on you? I know it'll hurt you, but you put it with WWE for like 12 years, so just let us push you a bit. Let us take you out of the mid grey stable and make you the main event babyface or heel for your last few months in the company, and we'll sign you through to that last day. But I don't think it's happening, unfortunately.
No, I mean, would you see him leaving? Do you think? I mean, I don't. I
couldn't see him leaving WWE, to be fair. I think he's happy, though. And part of that, like, obviously the counterpoint is, well, he's gotten to do what he wants in AEW for, the years he's been there, and that's why he loves it so much. Again, I would argue. You can push back a little bit. But, yeah, I think he's that's where he retires now, AEW, and obviously, yeah, I'm sure he'll be doing backstage jobs forevermore.
Well, that's the thing as well. So I think they'd be willing to offer him big money to work backstage. Like, effectively, like it's like the Bret Hart deal gone right. Like, where he wrestles, he finishes his career and he goes backstage. You could easily see him doing that for quite big money as like quite a senior figure, just for having that wrestling brain around the place. Fucking give him the book for a bit. See what telly he turns up with as well. Someone else who could possibly turn up to finish off with the last the contract things on here is there's apparently several indie companies very interested in Jinder Mahal following
Who's the source on that? Is it Jay Mahal or is it Jinder M?
Mate, I hope it is the Maharaja. Look, face it, the Bollywood boys are out there, aren't they?
Yeah, true.
So like fucking hell, like books itself. By all accounts, GCW, Black Label Pro, and AIW. Whereas really the three letters that come to mind when I think of Jinder Mahal and where he's going to end up next, TNA. That feels like the absolute. Yeah, that feels like the absolute location for him to be going there as well. So yeah, apparently he has a no compete without getting into that whole thing on that, and it's expected to be up in July. So yeah, that's the last of the contract stuff.
Tony, no.
Yeah. No.
That's all I'll say on that.
Not even as a one-off for shits and giggles.
No.
And I know he likes that stuff, but no. Oh, that was it. This was the last story. He said instead of inhaling on his vape. And we've all been tangoed and there. So Tangaloa is now Tongaloa in WWE. So yeah, he's well, they really should have gone for Tango of the combination of O's and A's in his name as well. It feels like that's the missed opportunity on there. So yeah, Tamatonga and Tongaloa. He's still shit. Doesn't change any of that stuff on there, does it? That's exactly how that remains.
It's a bit like when the Americans were fighting over whether the name was Pac or Pac, and it's Pac, just how we say it. And if you want to say Pac, like you say Tupac and we say Tupac, it's fine. It's just an accent. It's all right. That's how I always said Tanga/Tongaloa's name. So who cares? Same thing.
It would be awesome if in some sort of like quantum leap type experiment there was some sort of like British fella who got to basically take over his body like your man used to do on the telly program, and just dressed him all in orange and made him do the tango slap, which would make no sense to anyone there in WWE. But I would, I'd love that. We spoke about that on an episode of Time as well, about that craze for that, about that bloke slapping that fella in the face. But that's the only thing that would ever make me interested in him. Yeah,
literally took over my entire school to the point where, as we talked about, the Lit banning it, didn't they?
Yeah,
kids fucking love that.
Fucking hurt, mate, though, didn't it?
Oh yeah, fucking hell. 2 hands, Jesus,
bang, like brutal. What an advert.
Well, on that note, and it's a good lead into the WTV this week to close off on WWE. watched SmackDown on Friday. Not much happened. AJ Styles and Randy Orton had the most professional match you will ever see. It was pretty good, to be fair. But you know, close your eyes. It's what those lads work. AJ was saying this week he wants to work with The Rock. Good luck, mate. I think he's at a certain slot at this point. And you know, that main event was great last week, but let's not push your luck, mate. You're there to be the pros pro who's in there with the other pros. But he looked good. Orton looked good. It had a great big finish in it as well. I did enjoy that. That was probably the highlight of SmackDown this week, and the low light for me was probably the Bloodline stuff. I don't know if you saw any of it or any of the arguing on Discord. Would you believe me and Matty were disagreeing about the Bloodline? But like,
what?
There was a lot of talk about, like, you know, that obviously, you know, presumably Jacob's coming in at some point, but in the meantime, we have to all continue to pretend that Solo Sikoa is worthy of leading a stable. You know, let's just pretend that, you know, him and a mid-card Jim didn't get jobbed out the entire run to WrestleMania, both in a figurative and a literal sense, as far as being bumping mid-card stooges for Roman, and then also, you know, Solo pretty much being on a losing streak since the John Cena match, which feels about 3 years ago. Don't want to revisit it either, because it was fucking terrible too. But yeah, losing a lot on the house shows too, which again is not necessarily a huge problem when it comes to your TV wrestling, but it gives you an indication that, you know, they maybe didn't see Tama Tonga as Tama Tonga. Get me Bloodline lads mixed up. Solo Sikoa as like this, you know, leader who was going to end the story, capital letters, with the Bloodline anytime soon. But they're trying to reheat him. It clearly feels like one of Dwayne's big ideas, and obviously he wants to come back and do the belt versus belt thing with Cody, and I feel like he's probably going to turn out to be the evil mastermind behind the evil Bloodline. But fuck me, was he bad on SmackDown this week? Even just Tama Tonga was alright. He had a good little squash match and looked good, but even just standing next to me, just looked scruffy in his dad's suit, trying to project that he's like the leader of this stable. He had like a backstage segment where I always say it with Matt, this is where we do agree, like with WWE, it's like you always think about, like, oh, you know, what's people's promos like, what's the wrestling like? I think in WWE there's a third category there, and it's acting. You need to be able to perform in backstage segments and in, you know, back and forth conversation with people. And the backstage segments with Paul Heyman was fucking awful, as has been every time really he's been asked to speak, whether on the microphone or in a segment like that. But I don't know, he exchanged love and eyes with Roman Reigns 6 months ago, so I'm told I'm wrong, JP. But yeah, really, really poor, I thought. And yeah, this Bloodline team, I get where they're going, and I'm excited, you know, for the big moment when Roman and the Usos get back together, and a bit of talk on the Discord of potentially Sammy being involved there as well, if you've got Jacob Fatu on the evil Bloodline side, and that might make up the numbers to do a 4-on-4 War Games match, most likely at a Survivor Series. But yeah, they're gonna have to do some work to make these lads not come across as just, you know, NWOB team there to take the bumps and be the other side against the much bigger star power on the Roman side, if and whenever they do that match.
It needs The Rock, doesn't it? That side can only
the only way you can justify it.
Yeah, it's the only way to justify it, because it's such a change in his character to go from like monosyllabic enforcer to like head of the group. He's no Dave Bautista, like, where Dave could have at a push absolutely done that. But it also feels as well like, I mean, how much time was he in NXT for, really? Was this a guy who was like they've never put him in a position? Yeah, he wasn't.
He's never been good. He's not a good wrestler either. He's shit. He's been shit his entire run. He did a good job of standing silently next to Roman Reigns and giving the camera eyeballs when he needed to, but being asked to do more, he can't. He hasn't got it in him. The quicker Jacob comes in and just takes over, which was a story last week, wasn't it? That like there's some thought that Jacob's going to come in and outshine the fucking lot of them. I hope he does. Give that lad the microphone. He's fucking great. Let him talk all he wants. Let him talk. Let him do the talking. Let him do the wrestling. Let him stand head to head with Roman Reigns. He's not damaged goods like Solo has been these last 6 months, you know. Be well better.
Solo shouldn't be talking at all. Like, that should be really part of his gimmick, is he just doesn't talk. He just is violent. That would be the way to kind of say it. And then you have Jacob coming as the crazy violent. And then you have Tama Tonga, effectively. You can end up in a position with him being the kind of the guy to talk. just because I'm thinking of with the parts you've got, he would be better from the little that I've kind of seen of him, like with his talking, and even when he was doing it in ring, and like when he turned on Jimmy Uso, that was shit. Like, he was shit in his delivery. He wasn't fucking good, and I don't think he's. Yeah, I saw the picture of him in the suit, and it's not a good fucking suit either. Like, that's the other thing as well. Like, this isn't
like the suit I wore to my sixth form prom, you know.
Yeah,
it was my dad's, that one too. Maybe he got it off Rikishi. Rikishi Fatu with a PH, as we learnt on the Triple H show this week. I was going to say, by the way, you mentioned Batista there. That's the other thing I thought of when I was watching that AJ Randy Orton match. I was like, fuck me. Remember the different universe we used to live in? Remember that massive story in 2005 when Batista, who was on his main event push in WWE, just started randomly having a go at AJ Styles, saying him and those flippy dudes on TNA don't know how to work, and he watches them and they don't know how to tell a story. Like, look at AJ now, pro in there with Randy, couldn't be more respected. Hopefully Big Dave's walked that one back. He can also walk back blocking me on Twitter. I'd appreciate that, Dave, if you're out there and listening. But they were the most notable things from SmackDown for me, JP. And yeah, Raw wasn't a huge amount going on last night. Managed to squeeze that in this afternoon. Ilya Dragunov and Jey Uso was a pretty good main event, but Jey Uso is very one note at this point. He's literally a walking catchphrase, and it's over, and the entrance is over, and that seems to be he's becoming more Hacksaw Jim Duggan the more the weeks go on. And look, there's a time and a place for Hacksaw Jim Duggans, but I shouldn't complain. He won a main event match, which doesn't happen often for him. Just not very good for Ilya, who they've literally just seemingly called up to have him losing right away. But yeah, that was decent enough. If maybe Jay dragged it down a bit. Gunther and Kofi Kingston was probably the pick of the matches from Raw this week. I know I'm talking matches. That might be a bit of a match promotion on the sly right now, because that was a lot of fun with a big, I say in quotations, Gunther slapping around Kofi and being a bully. It was a really good little big man, little one match. So that was worth watching. Drew McIntyre and Damian Priest had a decent little back and forth promo segment, and yeah, Chad Gable continues to be quite good in his role, slapping around Otis. They were pretty much the highlights. You want the lowlights? The other 2 hours and 30 minutes. But watch the 15-minute version on YouTube. Don't be a glutton for punishment. Did you see any of it, JP?
No, I didn't on here, and I've just seen there was the number one contenders tag match. I bet that fucking dragged. Like, just about the Authors of Pain were in there as well. I was going to ask you, having watched all of this, who's winning King and Queen of the Ring at this early stage?
Really have a guess, to be honest. It's weird. They're doing the obviously we were joking about house shows before, and you know that being where Solo Sikoa's lost a lot of matches, and whether it matters or not was a conversation on the Discord this week. And yeah, they've been doing the King and Queen of the matches on the house shows. I'm kind of split on that. I actually think that's a nice little. On the one hand, it's a nice little thing to do to make your house shows feel important, to make the people there feel like they're getting something that is consequential. But on the other hand, I mean, they've seemingly realised they've got a pay-per-view in, like AEW, in less than 2 weeks, and it's like, fuck it, we need to blast through these brackets and get there. So it feels a little bit badly planned, a bit like the Solo thing, to be doing that too. But does it really matter? I don't know. LA Knight, maybe? That's kind of all I've got.
Because it would have been a point.
It's just a gimmick.
Yeah, it should be the stepping stone for them. Dare I say it? This for me feels as close as we're ever going to get to WWE's G1, and what a fucking like. At least it's over quickly, as opposed to the actual G1, which can fucking torture you for it. But that's a sad statement in many ways for them.
But maybe Gunther, maybe they'll do that. Maybe they'll go that route. And
I wonder.
Like saying that, can Gunther really lose? Like he's up against Jey Uso in the semis, and yeah, even if like an LA Knight makes it to the final or Randy Orton, I'm not having Gunther lose in that situation either, even if it is a Saudi show. Maybe they can do slip on a banana peel or something like that to avoid getting him there. Maybe they can do that. Wrestling for crowns, yeah, it's the new wrestling for points.
They should have that, and they should have him put it on the line when they go to Berlin as well. And it'd be something he could throw up there, like just as like he's got his own kind of title. It should be part of the mega push of Gunther. But my fear is he'll lose to Jey Uso and it'll be gone. No. And I'll have completely forgotten I would have said this.
They've been very careful with Gunther. And yeah, maybe he'll win to get that title shot in Berlin. The losses have been very, very few. In fact, I think only the Sammy match I can think of for Gunther. He continues to be the highlight of all the shows. So yeah, I think he does win it in the end.
Okay, I'll go along with that. Queen of the Ring. Any bold predictions? No.
Probably Jade Cargill, because again, she's another one. Can you really have a lose? And it's kind of meaningless. It's the Queen of the Ring. She'll look good in the crown, and that's enough for me.
Yeah, fair enough.
But yeah, on that note, that's all the WWE going on this week. Yeah, Gunther versus Orton could be the final, Ewan says. So yeah, whether we're necessarily interested in the outcome, could get a decent little final match there. What's going to become of me and being nice about Cope and Orton today, JP?
Mate's mad.
Glad Matty's not on the show. But we go from WWE into a promotion I'm not going to be nice about, New Japan, and the goings on there. I hope you saw Resurgence, because as soon as I saw the results, JP, I was out on watching Resurgence this week. I did, however, see a little bit of the best of the Super Juniors. Did see a bit of the next Japanese promotion we're about to talk about as well. But as soon as I saw that still image of Evil, and it was a still image because they're still cunts about putting gifs on Twitter of Evil stood there. Next to the opposite John Moxley declaring that he should be the number one contender, because the thing is, JP, all these hardcore New Japan fans have been fighting for the last couple of weeks about how angry they are that Powerhouse Hobbs got a IWGP title shot out of nowhere, whereas you should do things the proper old school way, the way they do it in Japan, which is Evil gets in the ring. And apparently that means he jumps the queue. They're just the rules. That's how it works. Gedo's been doing it for, 12 years at this point. Might as well carry on. Yeah, could you think of a less appealing main event for a show than Evil versus John Moxley? And that's what we're building to. Not the other way around. Even if you had to do an Evil match, do it at Resurgence and build and use that actual story you've got there with Moxley and Shota Umino to build up Dominion. But nope, we're going the other way around, and we're building to an Evil match, and the Moxley and Shota Umino match was kind of just there from what I've seen. Yeah. New Japan fans, new ways to make you excited, JP?
Well, I was cautiously optimistic on the weekend show because I had a good experience of watching the previous two kind of big US shows they'd had this year, being in front of good crowds and everything else. The fact that this crowd was around 3,000 was probably the sign that the novelty has kind of worn off, and it was very by the numbers, if I can be frank about it. Even matches like the Gabe Kidd one, but yeah, when it ended, I knew it ended with Evil on there, and I was just looking at him, and it was like, there's no reaction. There's not like a chorus of boos. It's just like people don't feel anything for him, and it's not. This happens in Japan as well. I don't understand it, and it's so lazy. And this time around, they just decided, right, he's got a spray paint, so he's going full NWO. Except he's just trying to he just basically filled in the title. A title I couldn't really care for. I'd prefer him to brought back the old belt and did it black. From a match that was decent, but you've got it right. They got it the wrong way round, if anything. Like the Dominion match we showed to Umino should be the one with the Japanese crowd wanting the guy who's come through the Young Lion system up against his mentor in a story that they've also been interested in. And I feel like I kind of wasted it here. Yeah. And Dominion would have done it. Do you know what? And I would have taken the fucking belt off Moxley as well. Or, I know that may seem like kind of sacrilege or anything else, but I think New Japan
needs to wait till Tony gives us permission. A forbidden door, you know.
But that's it. It's just like it needs to, they need to be doing something with it. And you think Evil and Sonata are just prime examples of guys who maybe they could have done something more with, but they took too long. And then they fucked up the characters over time to the point where they don't mean anything. And you don't want them to do this again, because it's like you kind of wasted your opportunity. And that's why you end up with the title back on Naito again. And, so I would have been an advocate of that and say have him have his first big defense at Forbidden Door to introduce him to a wider Western market, maybe. But yeah, that was like a decent match. But I think for a lot of this show, it was like, I don't know. I just found it very underwhelming. I mean, how many matches did you see? Because I saw pretty much all of this, and I really wondered why afterwards. Didn't watch it at all. Right?
Sorry.
If I said to you,
I'm unprofessional. I didn't care.
No, because you are professional, but you're more professional than I ever will be. But I look at this honestly, and I say, well, what's the match I'd recommend you watch that you need to go out of your way? There isn't any. There isn't anything from this card.
I feel like I should have watched Kingston Kids. That's the one where I'm like, I should go back and watch that.
But you know what? it wasn't that great, and it was partly, I thought, because it was no ropes, which kind of meant it was just like watching people do a hardcore match, but at Bloodsport. Like that's kind of what it looked like. So, and the bump he ended up taking was horrific. Like it was a suplex through the table, and they ended up like counting it down. And I don't like last man standing matches anyway. I don't like the count to 10 thing. I've never been a fan of it. They end up always generally dragging on for me. And yeah, it had its sort of requisite amount of violence, and it was the right move, and it was the better move to put the title on Gabriel Kidd, who appears to be the one young guy that they're actually kind of going with to a certain extent. But as a match, I don't think I'd go above like 3.25, 3.5. Like it was fine. And then he took that horrible bump where he looked like he's caught his back of his knee right onto the guardrail, like as he's going over, and he looked like kind of fucked and couldn't walk. So, maybe it's cracking selling, and it set up the Young Bucks return and Jack Perry and everything else.
I think it's been reported as legit. It's just to what degree, and you know what he's like. He'll want to sell it.
Yeah, he will do for that. But I think the like part of the problem with this, and we mentioned this with like Collision, is you've got Jack Perry and the Young Bucks on a New Japan show that's going to be watched by how many people are really buying those pay-per-views? There's not.
It's a cool little trivia note in it. Young Bucks back in Japan, like in New Japan at least. That's something,
It is. It's just that, dare I say it, should they not have been on Collision, adding the star power to that particular show, pushing the big storyline of the company storyline and the rest of it, and having the follow up from Wednesday. But crazy thoughts, crazy opinions on that. So I didn't think. And then there's a whole lot of other stuff. Shingo Yuya Mori, like it's like 3-star stuff in there. Like Jeff Cobb, Lance Archer it was fun because I've always got a soft spot for Lance Archer in the main. And he did his top rope. He did his walk along the top, and as he was jumping down, Jeff Cobb caught him into a tour of the islands, which was kind of cool. And it was only 10 minutes long. And Alex Windsor, it was nowhere near the Azumi match against Stephanie Vaquer, but
yeah, you were saying there that was good.
Yeah, it was fine, but it was also it wasn't particularly long as well. So it was like it was kind of there. And I did end up seeing it was on the kickoff. Leo Rush versus Mustafa Ali, which was a fucking weird one, like to have on the New Japan show. And obviously he's there with the X Division title, and then Leo Rush is going back to his gimmick because the lights went off and all the black blood was coming out of his mouth. And I was like, oh Christ! Like, point of this, it was, I just think overall this was a show that felt like it didn't feel that special. It really didn't, and I think, seeing one side of the arena when they go there where there's just no one sat, it's just never a good feeling watching a show.
Yeah, well, there was nothing there that made me jump out my seat. Almost, like I say, King and Kid, just to kind of see the accumulation of the Eddie Kingston is a gigantic loser story, as he loses yet another belt. I would kill to see the version of Eddie Kingston we saw in the OGs versus LAX in a proper main. Why, Steph said this the other day, why is every Eddie Kingston story ever got to be about like, oh, I'm fighting my demons so hard, I hate myself, everybody hates me. Like, it's always that downtrodden, the rest of his opponents don't respect him, all of that stuff. I just want to see badass King come out with perfect eyebrows and a black bandana on, just being evil. I want that. Let's do that story. Let's make him a strong character rather than being this poor puppy that I know a lot of people love, myself included. But I actually think I prefer the other side of King I was reminded of there. But that's over with, so we've got that. But yeah, King capital letters is what we need, as Ewan says there. But yeah, I didn't watch Resurgence because I thought the time was better placed. Kind of catch up on some Best of the Super Juniors and a couple of the other things we're going to talk about today. Doesn't seem like I got that wrong. And yeah, before we get into Best of the Super Juniors, like the Dominion card's not really turning me round either, JP. Yeah, Moxley and Evil. Great. Okay, that's not necessarily gonna get me to want to throw New Japan World on. Shingo Hanare, Yuya Mora, Great Khan, Jeff Cobb, Tomohiro Ishii, El Fantasmo and Hikuleo against Kenta, Chase Owens, Bishamon, and TMDK. And then, of course, as we're going to get into, the best of the Super Juniors finals. Remember when we were really excited about Dominion, JP? Remember that was a big calendar? That used to be on our list, where they do the big four WWE pay-per-views and all of the AEW pay-per-views. We'd have the big New Japan shows circled, including this one. Not even putting it on the calendar. It's a show that's happening in June. That's all I've got to say about it, really. Not very exciting at all. So there you are.
It was the big show before they had the G1. It was the last big stop on the way there, which might be some of the interest of what they have on this. They'll announce the sit there. It'll be the one that they don't announce who's in it, but they'll announce the towns. And I shouldn't be talking about the bit at half time on this show and the intermission is the bit that I'm most interested in seeing if I saw anything from this. Fucking state of that place. Honestly, we speak about Tony Khan like not having it. At least there's functional stuff on there, but my God, like that tag division, the fucking state of that as well. Like to mention. Sod.
There you go. That's New Japan in 2024. However, if you are going to pick your spots, I will say, and I saw John Pollock praise this as well, of the two best of the Super Juniors days we've had there so far, JP. I did think El Desperado and Kosei Fujita was a real highlight. If you got a chance to catch up with that, Gareth will fucking love that, because it was just a technical battle fought over two body parts, and Despy won because he's the dirtier fucker. Really well told story. They did a spot where he had like a leg grapevine. They rolled to the outside, and he just held it on until pretty much the 20 count, and then got back in the ring, and then that was kind of his advantage through the entire match. Really good work, really good stuff. And Kosei Fujita is obviously somebody that was a late addition, wasn't he, to the G1 this year? But I went out there and just had a very different match from what you normally get in these first days of the best of the Super Juniors, and it stood out for that reason as well. Very much a submission match more than anything, JP, and for that reason, I'd honestly say if you're a Garrett or those are your types of matches that you're into, with those little bits of selling. And it was the story I just summed up there was basically a very straightforward story where they're just trying to better each other, and like I say, the dirtier man won. Really good little match. I don't know if you caught up with it, JP.
No, I haven't seen any of the best of the Super Juniors yet. It was like waiting for the stuff to kind of come out at this point. I'm happy for Kosei Fujita, who it's like him being with TMDK. He's been kind of normalised as part of the main roster for a while. It's like a different. He has not. You would have thought he'd be getting sent away like everyone else is at some point. It's not really happened. I mean, he's actually made a couple of appearances in Rev Pro and those cards, but like this is the first time that I think in Japan he appears to be featured, and dare I say it, I know it's not about wishing injuries on people, but just sprucing it up a bit. I think that a few of these changes, is that how you felt on the stuff that you've seen? It's just been good to see different faces in there.
I picked and chose, so I got the new faces, to be honest. There wasn't a single part of me that was, as you will often say, JP, that wanted to see Kushida. That's where they immediately lose me. Yeah, I'm trying to think across the 2 days from what I saw. Blake Christian and Clark Connors was absolutely shite. That was bad. I felt a mistake for slowing down and watching that. What were the main matches on day one? Oh, Kushida and Hiromu. That was going back in time, a really solid 3.25 star match that, of course, Kushida won. In fairness to him, Kushida got a really decent response from the crowds, but wish I skipped along there. Teton and Desperado was good on the first day, but like I say, that Desperado match on the second day got more of my attention there. And on the second day, there wasn't really much going on other than Despy and Fujita. I didn't see Dookie and Hiromu in the main event, but first few minutes of that I saw didn't really seem up to much. And as far as there really wasn't much else from the rest of the card, I would say you need to sneak out. It was very much a Corrigan Best of the Super Juniors show for the day too. But yeah, that's in there. Ninja Mac is somebody who deserves a bit of credit. I can't remember if it was day one or day two. It was day two that he worked with Francesco Akira, which was fun. Love Francesco Akira. I think he's got something fresh and interesting to offer, and the fact that Ninja Mac is even there in the first place is kind of cool. So they're your bright spots, really. It's the stuff when you see the cards that we ran through on paper on the weekend show. There's the stuff that's like, yep, that's typical New Japan, and then the stuff where they thought outside the box a little bit has mostly worked. Blake Christine aside, who hasn't looked great so far, but yeah, that's it really. I wouldn't say anyone needs to waste too many hours on it, but yeah, definitely at least one standout match so far, which I'll take.
Okay, but that's something. It appears there's more to that than there was Resurgence. I think your time was much better spent than mine. Can't argue with that. And they'll probably, hopefully, I mean, this is going to be the point where, point everyone to the Discord, where in terms of match recommendations on the Japan thread, like things will come through. Because I know I saw a little bit of the all Japan discussion on there as well. But yeah.
So what's this news story? Kent is doing best of the best for CCW. I mean, that's a match made in heaven, to be fair, at this point, because Kent is where he is in his career, and CCW's best of the best isn't the best of the best that I'll be getting David picked to send me tapes of back in the day. It is what it is in 2024.
I mean, he's in the tournament. I assume he's winning the tournament, because I'm looking at the other people.
Probably if he's in it, yeah. Yeah,
he's not losing to Griffin McCoy, Miles Hawkins, Desayan Pratt, Lindsay Dorado, Richard Adonis, Robert Martyr, Troy Parker, or Storm Grayson. None of those. Oh, you
don't make those names up on Fridays. They are real. Oh, okay, fair enough.
Some of them are real. Not all. Half the fun. But like you look at that and you think, like he's not losing to any of them lads. Will it draw anyone? I don't fucking know. Is it worth the hassle? But then he lives in the States, isn't it? So I suppose it's just like, well, he's there, isn't he?
He's there. But
it'd be fucking
interesting that the entire time he lives in the States, they never did anything with him and CM Punk in AEW. But that's Kenta in 2024.
Yeah, it is indeed. And now, the next bit, nominally, I wasn't expecting you to watch, but I want to hear your thoughts about this as much as anything else, because it was the final of the Champions Carnival, which had been low-key getting some praise, like for All Japan. And there's previous Champions Carnivals I'd watched a lot more than this. But, they've got some young talent throughout the place, and it was the final between... the young lad of all of them, Kento Miyahara, who's only fucking 35, by the way. Will we start thinking?
A year older than Mick Foley in 2000, mate. Still got a bit of life in him. Then the McMahon can bring him back for retirement. Yeah.
And there's no fucking way of getting Kento Miyahara to do any of the bumps that fucking Mick was taking. There's a reason why Kento looks quite good still at this age. Up against, he'd be nominal tag team wrestler Jun Saito of the Saito brothers, he's a big lad by relative All Japan standards. But you watch this.
Mm-hmm. You don't seem so shocked, I love watching All Japan, mate. Watch it every week. That and Noah. It's a staple part of mine. It caught me in interest. I'd seen the obviously the praise for it, and I'm pretty sure somebody put it in the recommended batches folder on the old Discord as well. And yeah, I saw you'd watch this, JP, so I wanted to keep up with you. And obviously, my favourite wrestler EC3 is headed there soon, so of course I want to keep up with all things All Japan. We'll get to that story in a minute. It was all right. I'd go 3.5 stars on it. I do the reason I watched it. I like Kento Miyahara, and I wanted to see him. I just think he's very clearly he just bleeds star, and the bits that were more a Kento Miyahara match I was into. The first 20 minutes, pretty much, I wasn't. It was just it's almost half an hour, this match, and you could have chopped at least 10 off it. And there's a bit in the middle where I was definitely thinking... on the one hand, I was like, Jun Saito seems like one of JP's boys. There's just something about him. He's just that, he's got a bit of size on him, feels a bit different in this environment to the other guys. But it's also a negative, because he's he's doing American heel heat, in the bit. It's like watching Evil, in the middle of the match. It's slow plodding beatdown of Kento Miyahara to build up to a comeback. It's he might as well stop and stall and pose for the crowd. It was proper Memphis US wrestling, but not done particularly well. So I didn't really like him there. But then once it did get going, and in fairness, I suppose the positive you can say about the boring heat segment was when Kento Miyahara came back. The crowd were into it, but when they were fighting over stuff like I don't know what Kento Miyahara's like trapped arm German suplex thing he does his call, but like the fighting over that was really good, and the reversals around that were very well put together. The crowd were biting on the near falls towards the end as well, which always helps as well. And yeah, once the big bombs came towards the end of the match, it was kind of more what I pictured in my head. But yeah, there was probably maybe a little bit too much comedy for me in the match early on as well. Bit of it, like I say, too much heel stooging. But
over
once we got there, yeah, that's what it was. Yeah, and then once they got there, yeah, it was pretty good. But I wouldn't go higher than 3.5 stars, which is, you know, not a bad match by any means, but. All right. Don't know if you felt any different, and that's coming from me as well. I will say, not invested in All Japan whatsoever. Yeah. I feel like this is the first time I've seen Jun Saito. You can tell me if it's not JP, and I've actually watched them before. I do like Kento Miyahara, but I went in completely blind, having not seen any of the rest of the tournament. So, you know, give that the weight it deserves. And if you want to dismiss my opinion for that reason, that's fine. But a match for me. Sorry.
In the main, I kind of largely agree with you. I don't think I'd go above 3.5 stars for this as well. And apparently he was over here with his brother, because obviously his brother's big. He's got a big beard on him, which you see in the sort of pre-match bit as well, at a leisure centre in Hertfordshire, by all accounts.
When all the big things happen.
Of the bits I've seen of him in the main as a tag team, and it was a while ago when I saw them, they were pretty shit. They were just big blokes who they thought, well, there are big blokes, so we're just going to go with them. And this lad, he has come on a bit, but he's come on and it's still quite functional stuff, let's be honest. And I think that's what this kind of match is. But like you say, like the first 20 minutes, I was sat during that going, if this is a final, right, would it be more interesting to do a final that's 15 minutes? Simply because both of them are exhausted from having gone through this tournament all the way through to the final, and they both decide to go out there and sort of almost kill each other. Like have more of a 15-minute sprint. Kento doesn't really do 15-minute sprints, sadly.
Right.
And I love him to bits, and I think that's like part of the problem with it. But I've been agreeing with you about the final 10 minutes.
And also, he's trying to do it with someone who, just based on my limited knowledge, is a bit of a rough diamond, who's a bit early in his career, who you probably can't expect that from. So you've got to give it that context, which maybe me parachuting in is missing a little bit, in all fairness.
But do you know what? This is the thing at least I'll say about All Japan. Their champion is Yuma Anzai. They've got, it isn't like, I mean, there was a whole conversation on the Discord that I saw, but that was about, what's happened to Nakajima, and like, I mean, he's dropped the title, he's not turned up anywhere. I fully expect him to turn up in like New Japan or something like that. That's kind of where my mind goes. But they then have gone, right, we have to go with our young lads. And if their older guy, the old reliable they go back to is Kento Miyahara, that is great. I think it's just, for us, you want to see him on, you always want to see him on the biggest stage. And it felt like a few years back, the match with him and Tanahashi would have just been like, what a bit of business that would have been incredible. But that's never going to happen because Tanahashi isn't at that level where you could have that kind of like match.
Just on that note, sorry, not fully related, but where's Nakajima? What happened to all the rumours of him coming into AEW or whatever? Or maybe not AEW, but signing somewhere.
Yeah. By all accounts, like there was a thing where the thing that I had seen, this is going on the Discord, was that it wasn't Shuji Ishikawa, who the booker, who wanted to go with Nakajima. He kind of ruined his plans. The president had brought him in. They wanted him in. They got him there, and then they took the belt off to go to Yuma Anzai. He was never going to be there for a long time because they just don't have the kind of money. It did make an impact on the business, which is a thing to note for this as well. Like, I'm always happy when we've seen enough All Japan where they're wrestling in front of like what appears to be like 100, 200 people. And it's kind of sad because it's a promotion with proper history and the big sellouts, you know, throughout all of the 90s and stuff like that. So to see them at a point where they're doing it in front of, like, they've got this final in front of 2,500 people, one of the lads isn't a big star, and you're going, well, that's kind of, it's the right direction as well. And I have to say, little production stuff on this I thought was actually quite good. What I saw of it, like the packages and whatnot, it was a lot better than what All Japan normally do. But with Nakajima, I don't know, like, he just seems he's a difficult prick, basically. He seems like he's one of those lads, which is fine. But you know what would be interesting to see him would be being as a push commodity in New Japan. Would he stir things up? Yeah. Do they need stirring up? Abso-fucking-lutely. like they need to go with this guy. So that would be and they need someone like that, just as utter maverick to kind of have like on the shows, and he'd be an interesting person to go with. But no, we're in agreement on certainly on the Champions Carnival show there, and it'll be building up to Kento, Yuma, Anzai, and whether or not is he going to beat him. Basically, like that'll be. It'll be. I can imagine so, because when in doubt, you put the belt on Kento, don't you?
Maybe I'll parachute back in then, JP. But yeah, the other story. What's this about EC3 coming in? What's that?
So, and I've written on here the little tagline, and this is what Giant Barber would have wanted. Well, he's defending the NWA World's heavyweight title, because obviously it's multiple worlds that he is champion of, not just this world that we're on Earth, against Ryuki Honda, so not the top guy, and that's on the 29th of March All Japan show at Korakuen, and this is going to be one of their Superpower series, because they always have the usual series of events there. So he is he's going to be on there. This is on the undercard to Kento Miyahara versus Yuma Anzai. So in there, and also you've got the end. So it appears to be like a big. We're going to get some sort of NWA angle. Paro and Odinson challenging the Saito brothers for the tag team championships. I'm not hopeful of that match as well. Remember the last time NWA had lads in Japan, in New Japan? Do you remember those?
Wasn't that that was Chase Owens, wasn't it? Wasn't he part of that?
Yep, Rob Conway.
Rob Conway. What was the manager called? He was the guy who ran the company, wasn't it? Bruce, whatever. Bruce. Bruce Thorpe, maybe. Yeah.
I want to say Bruce Thorpe. That's one that feels right, but I want to say it might be Tharp. And he was mad. He turned up and they Big Daddy Yum Yum. Not everything about those New Japan like big shows in 2018 were always 2017, 2018. They weren't always magic. You had to sit through some of that show. Yeah, Kojima, but you laughed at it, and it was kind of funny. And then Kojima would be NWA World Champion for a bit, because that's what they'd end up having. But yeah.
There we go. Well, on that note, moving away from Japan, before we get some last news and notes, we do have the traditional documentary corner, as we need to talk some Dark Side of the Ring, and of course talk the big story on Vince McMahon that everybody wants a Dark Side of the Ring on. Just Black Saturday. I did say on the pre-show was my heart was warmed a little bit by my younger brother Peter, who doesn't watch wrestling anymore, but was watching with me in the 90s and early 2000s, discovering, I'm guessing Dark Side of the Ring showed up somewhere where he watches telly, maybe somewhere there. I also watch American cable TV somehow magically through the internet, and yeah, he's been burning through them. He's telling me how he really enjoyed the New Jack episode. Watched a few of the others. I think he said he was watching the Owen Hart and the Benoit one's next, and I was like, yep, it'll live up to its name, mate. But yeah, I recommended he watch the Candido and Sonny one and a couple of the others that I think were standouts through the years. So yeah, maybe he'll catch up with this one at this point. And yeah, this was obviously Black Saturday, the rise of Vince McMahon in the 80s, which was an interesting story, to be honest. I will say, JP. Black Saturday banded about a lot, and broadly, I know the story. Broadly, of course, we've all seen the picture of Vince McMahon in front of the World Championship Wrestling banner, and it looks wrong, because there he is, taking the Georgia time slot there. But there were all of the ins and outs that maybe call me ignorant I wasn't aware of. Maybe it was, a lot of this show is, describing these stories for the layman, but thought Meltzer did a good job of explaining the detail behind it. I thought Cornette had another good show. He's always good, as long as you're not getting him to talk about Vince Russo. That was another note that Peter said. It was something on the lines of, that Jim Cornette's all right, apart from when he keeps going on about that Vince Russo bloke, having literally no clue who Vince Russo is. That'd kill Matthew, wouldn't it?
We need to get Peter on here.
I want to know his full thoughts, but he obviously has no clue who that man is. But yeah, Cornette was good here, and I thought it was a good documentary, this one. Some good footage. Thought the Briscoe brothers came across fucking terribly, but we can get into that. Thought Nick Patrick came across well in it, and my only negative, as I said at the top, JP, was like, it just felt a little bit odd for this to be the Vince McMahon episode, and it worried me a little bit that they ended it with, and P.S. Vince McMahon was arrested, and it gives you the detail of the current court case and the current standing of it, and it's like, I hope that's not the whole Vince McMahon story, because there's 30 years in the middle, we probably need to cover on an entire series of Dark Side of the Ring. I hope they're probably still going to get there, and it feels like because Vince is where he is in the world, they almost feel like there's a green light now for Cornette to say negative things about Vince to the extent that Cornette will, and how people like I say Nick Patrick having that damning quote I mentioned earlier about Vince being the reason there's a HR in wrestling at this point. But yeah, that aside, I don't know if you shared the same misgivings. Thought it was a good episode, JP.
I thought this was a very good episode. In some ways, I wanted this to be a lot longer because I think there's a lot of stuff on here that potentially could have been like a much bigger kind of documentary, because really, like, I think there's so much stuff about the NWA and how it is run and the territory system and all those kind of things. There's almost like there's a HBO drama in there to kind of follow like how this guy eventually takes over the industry in here. And like you, I always knew it was the case that this was going to be this was like kind of like a seismic event, and I knew like a good bit amount of the details, but I think it's one of the ones where, because it is historical, it's the stuff about, say, Jim Barnett, like, who is this figure, I don't say that he's like, seems like a mythical figure. He'd always been mentioned a lot in like history books. Now, I haven't read the David Hornbacher book on the territories, and I think that's something I probably would need to go back on. But the idea of Jim Cornette, of being like, at that point in time, an openly gay man in wrestling.
You wouldn't like that, but you said Jim Cornette.
Oh, did I say Jim Cornette? Oh.
It's supposed
to put up on YouTube and see what happens with the response for that.
I think you did anyway.
I stick by my comments.
Give us an instant reply.
But Jim Barnett. I have to. Is like, he is this kind of figure within wrestling. You knew he was a power broker. You knew he was kind of like, he'd worked both sides against the middle. He was that type of a guy. And like, we always knew about Ole Anderson, but it was someone kind of like, at this time round, we kind of almost had like the contextual situation of like this and what Ole Anderson was behind the scenes. And his son doesn't feel like he's like, the apple falls far from that tree.
No,
he's very much,
I liked him.
Yeah, I liked him. He sounded like the old man, even if the old man probably told him to cut his beard a few times. He wouldn't have liked that.
You know what he sounded like? He sounded like he's been sat at, as he kept mentioning, like, my dad was like this in public and he was like this at the breakfast table. He's just basically, he doesn't say it in these words, he was just a miserable cunt 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
But for like that lad's, how old he is, in his 30s or whatever, his entire 30-something year life, his dad's just been moaning at the breakfast table about Vince McMahon, what happened on Black Saturday, and all of the other, stories over the years and all his different gripes with people. You could tell he knew it all. He knew it all by heart, and he could be that proxy for his dad, who was sick at the time. Obviously, later died. But yeah, quite interesting talking head.
But he himself is an interesting figure, Ole Anderson, because he would be around on the TV and stuff when I was first watching WCW, and then when you started getting the tapes, particularly like kind of things like Starrcade '88, and you were like, the fuck is this bloke? Like, he didn't look like much necessarily, and then over time you realise like how aggressive he is. And obviously they get the story in where Vince McMahon, where he's like, fuck you and fuck your wife, like line from that as well, which is it's kind of fun. And I think they've been called a lot fucking worse. Like, I don't think that like that's the kind of like level of mortal offence that's gone on there. But it is like, in some ways I found the stuff like where Vince was involved was almost like less interesting. I was more interested in Ole. I was more interested in the relationship with the Briscoes, who you mentioned as well, who...
Couple of cunts, them. Couple of cunts. It's not their fault the territories fell. They get away with it too. I always think that about like Jerry Briscoe, like... he seems like a nice old man in some ways, and then in other ways, you're a slimy cunt, Like, there's points, when they do their fucking propaganda documentaries, or it used to be, and there's a quote in one of the, I think it might be Rise and Fall of WCW maybe, or whatever that one was called, where he's just like, they came to tick our jobs, and he's like, did they, mate, or were they just a rival wrestling company that like you guys were trying to put out of business too? And I always thought he was a cunt ever since I heard him say that. And like in this, it's just like, oh yeah, we sold out Oli, and we had like a fucking blood oath, and we just thought we fucked him off and sold off to Vince. And do I have any regrets? Nah. It's sound. I got paid for it. And it's just a bit like, fuck me, you cunt. Like, you brought this entire operation down, you and your brother. Like, that should be talked about more, 100%.
And he goes, I called it Green Saturday, not Black Saturday. And it's like, okay.
Yeah, he says that, doesn't he? Yeah. Fucking hell, mate. Yeah, for you.
You seem to be saying the quiet part out loud here. I don't know if he needed to be doing. I mean,
big character in that. Big character.
But I think that's probably the more interesting thing about this is people are at the point where they just don't give a shit. And they're just going to say things as it is. And that's what they are. They're like, they don't, you know, they think Ole's skimming from the top. It turns out Barnett is. Then Barnett goes and then he finangles the TV deal. They're all bastards in one way or another, aren't they?
But I completely buy Ole's son telling the story, going, no, like the story was like that, like he had... Yes, there was money in the account, but guess what? It costs money to run a business. We needed that to book the venues and to do all the other things, whereas the Briscoes were like, carny wrestling people, like, just give us the fucking money and pay it out now. Why can't you just give it to us? I was totally, like, on the Ole side on that one. I wasn't with him when he was like...
Ole all the way in this.
When the son was like, you know, my dad, you know, he's a man of his word, and he didn't think people would lie to him. That's why he went along with it. I was like, hang on, you didn't think people would lie to him in the wrestling business where the entire job is lying? Okay, he probably got what he deserved there. But yeah, that into politics and how that all came together, and obviously the fall apart, and the fact that, you know, Ole then ends up selling to Vince himself because he might as well get something for his 49% is super interesting. Like I didn't know as well. Like for me, again, someone who kind of broad strokes knew the story, I thought Black Saturday happens and then Vince McMahon wins the end, and it's like, no, Black Saturday happens. Doesn't really work for Vince because the time slot that he's put all this investment into is a Georgia time slot who don't want to see his brand of wrestling, and they're all fucking, whether it's true or not, Cornette and Meltzer are saying, like, literally the fans were ringing the switchboards going, we want the proper wrestling back. And then apparently behind the scenes, Ole Anderson speaks to Ted Turner directly, who agrees to give, you know, what would later become, you know, WCW a time slot at, like, I suppose 7:30 on Saturday mornings or something daft like that, until eventually they get the time slot back, and then I guess that becomes the Crockett slash WCW slot later on. I didn't know any of that, so it's not like it's immediate, you know what I mean? It's like there's a fight to get it back, and there's a disgust with what Vince McMahon's done, and then, you know, as Meltzer puts it in there, the fall of the territory was coming either way. If it wasn't Vince McMahon, it probably was going to be someone else. Vince gets all this credit as this super genius who saw what no one else could see, a national wrestling company, and Meltzer's like, no, there were like 12 other promoters who had that same vision, and of course cable TV existed, of course wrestling was going to go national, of course you couldn't keep it regionalised. Like, imagine if 2024, if that was still the case. It's not happening, is it? Like, the internet exists now, it was dying at some point, so it's not as simplistic a story as I think it's repeated, and there's more nuance to it, even if broadly there's still truth there, and there's characters like the Briscoes in here to blame for, you know, the quickness of the fall of the territories, maybe, JP.
Well, that was it. They were the ones willing to kind of cash it. They weren't interested in it. They just wanted money. I think that was it. And it always seemed to be that for Jack Briscoe, because he just leaves wrestling, doesn't he?
Yeah,
he's the guy who just decides, that's it, I'm going home, I've had enough, I'm not doing this anymore. You know,
run the car shop.
And that's it. Do the Briscoe Brothers Body Shop, whatever the phone number is from the No Way Out pay-per-view, isn't it?
Got it on the t-shirt. He's like 41 there, and he's Jerry Briscoe. Something daft like that, some number like that.
Maybe Steve Austin was so angry with this, that's why he's ended up taking those two bump through the ring ropes and that massive twatting with the chair to the head. Like that possibly is why maybe Steve Austin was still angry about the fall of the NWA. But to bring up the point about cable, AWA was on ESPN, and they wasted it. Yeah. Like, they wasted the time slot. What Vince McMahon always had was like a vision and an idea. At that point in time, you could argue he was genuinely in touch with what the public wanted. He read the sort of like the public mood, and it wasn't wrestling. It was larger than life superheroes, you know, coming out of the 70s where there'd been this kind of national malaise in the US, into the 80s with Ronald Reagan and everything else, and things being a bit more rah-rah and ultra-capitalistic. So people like him would end up being rewarded and viewed as captains of industry at this stage. Like, you know, for Vince, that's like, he had that vision to do it, and he mentions it about the fact that Crockett, effectively by buying the time slot off him for like near $1 million, that went towards WrestleMania, which then ended up establishing WWE. So in the end, they ended up paying for it anyway. But yeah, he wouldn't have fucking lasted. Like, the territories were dying on their arse then at that point. World Class would have if they could keep the lads off the blow. Like that really could have been the little star that could.
But yeah, all in all, I really did find it open and interesting. Will says the Sex, Lies and Headlocks does a good job explaining it, as does Flair's biography, which I have read. So I guess maybe the details were hazy for me. But I thought this was an A+ episode, and there's been a couple of C+, B- episodes, I would say, this season so far. And yeah, I thought everyone was good in it. I learned things. Great talking heads. Like, yeah, really good one.
What I am hoping as a result of this is that your Peter gets in contact and goes, that Bob Roop is a weird one, isn't he? And like, you just go like, what the fuck? And you just realise he's watched all of the Dark Side of the Ring.
You'll get there. It sounds like he's...
I'm watching Chris Colt matches on YouTube. Something like that, he tells you.
Why did we watching Colt Cabana? Anyway, different Chris Colt. There we go. But yeah, anything more on it? Anything you learned from watching it? Obviously, it's a story I think you're more familiar with than me, but yeah.
I think it's more... Move on? It's more hearing it from the people themselves, like all at the same time. So it feels like, because it's always felt, the problem is with this is like when you hear the assassination bit, I just went, that's bullshit. That never happened. Like that wouldn't be a thing that would end up taking place on it. I think it's the idea of just having it kind of laid out in this way, and I think because the situation that Vince is in, like it just felt there was a bit more freedom for people to talk about it. So it feels a lot more brutally honest. And it's very different from the other Dark Side of the Rings, where a lot of them can end up feeling quite sleazy, if we're going to be honest, like about them. Like this, in terms of the topic and the subject matters, it's like people sort of like giving into addiction, and it ends up kind of bleak in this way. Whereas this one's much more interesting because like the people there are in the main like quite sober characters, and they're quite clever, and there is no necessary hero, and they're all trying to like slightly outmaneuver it stuff. So the stuff with Vince calling up arenas and getting the police involved to do lads for drugs and stuff like that as well, which, hey, that feels like a wrestling trope at this stage. But it was very much so. It was having it kind of laid out the way it was. It was like, okay, this is really interesting, and then you realise all the sort of little sliding doors moments of like where big things from wrestling history end up coming on from this as well. And yeah, like I'd highly recommend this one. But I think overall, this might be one of the, and it could be easily recency bias, but I think this series of Dark Side of the Ring as probably will end up getting the least sort of amount of viewers because we're in series 5. It's up there as one of the best series that they've done. Like, I think.
Yeah, I'm not sure at this point. There's been a couple of weak points. Maybe once it's done, I'll be able to make that declaration. But it's been a strong season. I'd at least say that. And there have been a couple of weak ones in the middle too. But yeah, great episode. I'd very much agree with that. And yeah, I thought that, like, you know, they say I love the line at the end as well. Executive shit about Vince being sacked off. Literally have a line in there about him, the physical and emotional abuse, effectively ending his 55-year run with WWE, and then a couple of seconds later, as dark and horrible as that genuinely is, a couple of seconds later you get Ole Anderson passed away also on February 26, 2024, and it's almost like a my work here is done moment, which, you know, I wouldn't make that joke about anyone else, but Ole Anderson, I mean, you know he's thinking that from, you know, wherever he is, probably further down rather than up. But yeah, way with the one to it, I reckon, for Vince to come down in flames. But yeah, good one, yeah, obviously, always fun doing the. Is that actually? I've just realised. Is that the last one in the series? Is that it?
That's the last one in the series. We've then got on June 4th. We have the Death of WCW is on. Yeah. So we've got a couple of weeks break from it in the meantime. And I think that might be on all of the documentary fronts. I'm not watching the Hidden Treasures thing, but I enjoy, like, there is enough good content out there. Maybe, dare I would say, there's a thing on Apple TV which I meant to watch. I know it was up for the Emmy, which was the Monster Factory documentary. There's one that I do want to kind of like take a dive into. And I swear Strickland having a documentary made about him, but that'll be something quite boring that they'll use on a countdown show. Will never get any airplay rather than making an interesting kind of story about him.
It'll be 10 minutes and how to do forward rolls. One of which he did in that beatdown segment. It wasn't the moment, mate. He didn't need it. Anyway, love Swerve. Don't love his choices sometimes. But there we go. That's Documentary Corner. And yeah, as far as other news going on, JP, around the rest of the world, as we keep saying, if this is a shorter spotlight than normal, it's because there's not much going on in the wrestling world this week. But yeah, got a couple of other news notes to send us home, JP.
We've never spoken about this, but soft ground wrestling in Uganda. We've never had that conversation. It feels like obviously we're incredibly late to the party. I like it's when like we have these sort of series of stories like coming into the mix where one, they've got a championship made for them as well. I think they've got several Kickstarters that are out there. Will Ospreay obviously said is going to be out there at some point challenging the Bull, isn't he? He's going to be there. I mean, I was like it's a hell of a title, actually, I have to say, for these lads. It looks like the old IC title. Like, I
does,
think
very much so. Like, I'm pretty sure it is. yeah. Just spoken like a true indie, you know. Recall of the IC belt, it'll work. If
they can do that, they can get a sort of hooky version of the big gold belt as well. I'll probably like it even more. But it's the fact now that the import into it, dare I say it, is making this as short-lived and as fun at points it was to watch it, very much jumping the shark. That was the sort of bigger point I was wondering about this, because we talk about when you read the headline that says Kushida says that competing in SGW would be interesting, which is ironic because him appearing there makes it less interesting than it is. So he can have a fucking dull match in the mud while them talking to these lads about Back to the Future. Like, as well. And then we get Tate Mayfair's, is it the TNT champion, coming over doing the bidding of Lord White in soft ground wrestling, and he was looking for revenge on Jordan. He was backed up by Mason Mansour, MXM, on the last show.
Oh yeah, they were over there, weren't they? Yeah, not long ago. That's the problem, innit? Like, it's a really nice thing, like the fact that it exists, and like the whole thing that it's an entire, you know, community that come together to do these wrestling shows, and they're just, you know, they're just really high quality backyard wrestling shows, and they're making the most of the limited stuff they've got. And obviously, joke about Mason Mansour going over. I think people were saying the shot was junk then, but it was people who were on WWE TV quite recently in a scenario like that. It obviously meant a lot to the people there, so it was cool and nice to see. It's been overall a nice story, and obviously Mason Mansour have raised a lot of money for it through their Twitch streams and such like that as well. But yeah, once you see cunts like Tate Mayfair's making the out there, you do kind of wonder if this thing might be done. It's almost a shame that happened before Ospreay could get out there, you know, because he's literally said as much, didn't he, on Swerve's podcast, that he's going to be out there sometime soon to work at a full match out there as well. But yeah, obviously the parasites are landed and seeing that I could get some Instagram and TikTok views out of this if I just fly myself out there, and I'm sure there's good that's come with it. Let's just say, let's be charitable and say this. I'm sure there's been assistance, financial and otherwise, from the people behind Tate Mayfair's. In fact, I'm 99% certain that's the case. But yeah, it's a shame that I think we were going to talk about it on an Ask Grapple a little while ago. Gareth really wanted to talk about it, but I think we got too drunk and forgot. And then by the time we got around to it, now it's a bit like, it feels a little bit exploitive now. But oh well, fun while it lasted.
Exactly, and I think for what it is, ultimately, is it. Like, in order for it to kind of like exist as this curio like feature on the outside of wrestling, which, you know, it's a damn sight better, I imagine, than Power Uti and any of his stuff that he was doing in those kind of like ever watch a Luke Gallows shoot interview, you'll see all this stuff when he talks about his experience in Nigeria, and there is videotape from it as well, and it's fucking weird. this is at least a lot more organic, but it's that trade-off of people wanting the clicks and the interaction, and you're getting that, and the kind of like it's
I mean,
it's
I love
cheap
YouTube
notoriety.
there, so.
I'm going to get myself over to Uganda, and then what we'll end up with is, and I don't want to end up with progress matches happening in a muddy field in Uganda. That's not like a situation, and that's where I end up feeling like that's what we're going to end up with ex-WWE guys going, hey, look, I competed in soft ground wrestling, and it's less about the people who actually are the bread and butter of this. The Lord White stuff, like, I laughed at, like, in the main, as like this colonial master heel of the promotion.
Only they could get away with that.
Beat down. Yeah,
there's been elements of that I've seen people enjoying too much.
Yeah.
But they can get away with it, so it's all right.
Exactly. But ultimately, it's like you say, it's high quality backyarder stuff. It helps that it's happening on mud. Like, you can take all manner of wacky bumps and everything else, and it's a hot fucking crowd. They love it. They're well up for it. As well, at the same time, you almost want to see it leaving at that, and just people might give them money in order for them to kind of continue and everything else, and see if it, just exists on the outskirts of wrestling and it's good for them, rather than people actually turn up and make appearances. That seems a lot less cool to me. I've got like relatively little interest in that.
Well, there we go. I think there's, if I'm not mistaken, that's the end of everything there going on this week. That's our lesson. Anything for YouTube clicks. I say that as somebody who was sent a code for a free Greg sausage roll by YouTube this week, JP. That's how well the graphic YouTube's going. I'm in an exclusive club, I was told, on the email of creators who were offered this very important prize. I'll be collecting that. Might eat it live on the weekend show on Friday this week. There you go. How about that for a teaser? That's when we know we made the big time, JP. Free Gregs. Long may it rain.
Can I have that, please? I'm well up for that.
I forgot another code. You can have that one. But yeah, what else we got going on? Obviously, yeah, we've got the King of the Ring 2001 show at the weekend with myself, Matty, and Michael Hamflet of What Culture, which will be, like I say, me and the two Dr. Feds. So kind of one, imagine my hell, but two, it's actually something I've been wishing for. So very excited to get those two lads together over the weekend. Probably a Monday release. In fact, will be a Monday release for that one on the Patreon. Weekend show on Friday, as usual, is also the plan. JP Spotlight next week. Yeah, listen to Time if you haven't already. Listen to Brett Show. Don't know. Is that everything? Anything else to plug, JP?
Everything. You mentioned Paul as well. We've got so much stuff out there as well. So the place to go to is patreon.com/grapple if you want to support us, and go to the YouTube. Become a YouTube member, youtube.com/@grapple.
Definitely. Get that all there. But yeah, on that note, we will catch you for more next week on Spotlight, and more over the weekend with all of that bonus content as 411 does One Last Death on my computer. Oh, yeah. It's been one of those type of nights, folks. But yeah, thank you, patrons, for supporting us through another month. Thank you to live patrons. Thank you to our Kings of the Mountain, Conor Laughlin, Eddie Sideburns, Chris Platt, and Ewan Cameron. We will catch you again next time.
Bye.
Good night, all.